This one's for you, Frank.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, and anyone else. Here we are, ready to watch another movie, and it is called
The Alto Nights. I guess it was released last month.
a recent movie.
Yes. And, there are several reasons why I picked up this movie. I didn't watch it either. It's going to be a first watch for both of us. Well, it's Robert De Niro, right? And
Okay.
I like this actor. And I guess I've seen, I don't know if I've watched all of his movies, but a lot of his movies. And the second reason is I just looked over the Wikipedia article on this movie. I didn't read the plot, and I understand that this movie is about the Italian mafia in US, in the early stages of the Italian mafia here in this country.
Okay.
And I know that Robert De Niro is one of the best actors when it comes to an American playing an Italian.
Okay.
And the other, and now here's another reason why I would very much like to watch this movie. Another reason is that another very good American actor, which can play an Italian character, and he did, just like Robert De Niro, is Al Pacino.
Is he in the movie too?
That's the thing, he is not. But what is intriguing is that although the movie has two main characters, two Italian mafia characters, both of them are played by De Niro.
Ah, so you're thinking,
And-
why didn't they bring Al Pacino in for the second one? Because
it's intriguing.
De Niro is playing two different characters in the movie?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay,
And so
that's
it's intriguing.
unusual.
It's intriguing.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious what is with this movie, right? And anyway, so let's just go ahead and watch it. We have to say that unfortunately we cannot post this on YouTube for obvious reasons. If you want to watch it, just go on Patreon and Coffee. But yeah, let's sit back, let's relax, let's watch together this movie, and then we will talk about it a little bit, see the candid ideas that will come to mind, and we'll see where this will take us.
Sounds
So
good. Let's go.
first question, did you like this movie?
I did enjoy it.
did?
And I wasn't sure if I would. Well, obviously Vlad has watched more than one mafia-themed movie. This is probably
Yes.
my first mafia-themed movie. Have I watched any others?
Because
kind of.
you didn't watch The Godfather.
No, I haven't.
Okay, yeah.
I haven't.
Probably this is the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I wasn't sure how would it be and would I like it. It was, at least this movie I thought was nice. There were a lot of things I liked about it. I enjoyed about it. And even just the production side of things, the imagery, the colors, the scenes, the characters, okay, the actors, yes. Robert De Niro is a really great actor, but I was also impressed with some of the others. Who played his wife? She didn't really have a starring role, but at the same time, every time she came on screen, she was so good. And she didn't really have to say a lot to express so much. And I felt like the cast was really well chosen, well set up, and it was fascinating to think about, okay, why did they cast De Niro in two different roles in one movie? And it was also fascinating to see how well it worked out.
I mean, yeah, he's an amazing actor, right? I like the movie, but I have one complaint, maybe. I don't know.
Okay, what's that?
I felt like it was a bit too long for what they wanted to say. Meaning, they spent a lot of time on scenes, on occasions which were not essential to the points or they wanted to make. I kind of feel like at a certain moments I was like, okay, I understand. Okay, it kind of lost me a bit.
Okay.
Just a bit. Just
I don't
a
know.
bit.
Maybe it's
good
just
movie.
Maybe it's just because it's my first time watching a movie of this on this subject.
Did it take you back then? Because that's another big question about a movie. Did it take you back? Did you?
I actually really enjoyed the scenes because and the length of them, because it gave me a chance to really just sit back and study them and think about, okay, oh, look at those amazing cars. Oh, wow, all the details. You know, there was time for me to look, not just be like, oh, there's a cool car crossing the screen, but there was time.
Okay,
it felt like it was a movie that allowed time for enjoyment along the way.
So unlike me, you enjoy this very long scenes and
in this case, yes.
Okay, good.
There have been a few
That's
movies
fine.
I've watched that felt like, you know, okay, why am I still sitting here looking at this? But in this case, you know how it is when you look at a classic painting, like say a Renaissance portrait or something like that, and you see the colors and and you look at the clothing and the details. It's from such a different era, and you find yourself spending a lot more time there looking at the details than is really necessary to say, all right, I see. It's a portrait of some rich dude back then, you know.
Or like a piece of poetry, like a poem which was written in the old language.
Yes,
and
you start to enjoy
yeah.
the different feel that the language. So I felt like this one,
Okay.
I don't know if I would say that it transported me back then. I don't know. It was more like I was an observer, but I was an observer who had the time
Right.
to observe and enjoy
Yes.
the
Yeah. Well, again, for me, just as I said at the beginning, my biggest question was, why did they choose to have De Niro playing both characters? Because, as I said, De Niro and Al Pacino, and I'm not saying that Al Pacino should have been the other one, but he is so good in playing this, and both of them played similar characters in two movies, in The Godfather Part 2 and in The Irishman, which I've seen. She didn't, obviously. And they made a couple of other movies together. And I mean, they're very good as a team. They're very good.
I see,
but
yeah.
especially playing Italians. So anyway, again, I'm not making the case here, and I'm not saying, hey, De Niro, Pacino should have been one of the two. I'm not saying. My question is, why this choice of having one actor playing both characters? Because it is unusual.
Yes, and I guess, I mean, I haven't seen those other movies, and I wouldn't have thought, okay, it needs to be Pacino or whatever. But the question does arise, even for me. Why go to all that trouble to cast two characters with the same actor? Why bother?
Yeah.
Because obviously, if you've got access to this caliber of talent and skill, you can certainly bring in somebody else if you want to. So I feel like it was truly an intentional choice, and not just a fact of, we couldn't get anybody else to play the role.
Definitely.
It was a very intentional choice. And I feel like that's something worth exploring as how does that contribute to the message, the point of this movie? Why is that? Is it just merely for entertainment, or is there something deeper going on?
And it is not just because De Niro is such a great actor that, as we could see, he could play perfectly both of them. He was just amazing. But I do believe that the writers of this movie wanted to make a point, and I have an idea in my mind. I'm not saying that this is what they thought. This was their idea. Somehow in my mind, or what
I'm curious what you're thinking.
Okay, what I understand is this. Obviously, the two characters in the movie, they were very different. We could say one was the bad criminal, and the other one was the good criminal.
It was almost a parable of good against evil,
right?
Or evil against good and evil, and he was both of them. He was the good and he was the evil. It's so interesting seeing it presented, this good and evil presented in in a mafia movie where basically everybody's an outlaw.
Okay,
so,
but that's
still,
the point.
The good and the evil.
The good and the
there.
evil within, both of them being criminals. And of course, the question can be asked, okay, so from what point on are you considered a criminal? If you get a speeding ticket, are you a criminal? I don't think so. But, okay, let's say this. Both of them went to jail several times.
Yeah, I guess I would say, instead of saying both of them are criminals, because yes, that does bring up some complications of how do we grade criminals, and at what point does criminality become something. I guess I would say both are outlaws. Both are operating outside of the lawful.
Okay, I understand your point, but I'm still saying because they went to jail. If you go to jail, you must be a criminal.
Not necessarily.
No, look, the guy admitted his fault. It was not like he was saying, "Hey, I'm innocent.
I'll grant you that.
Yeah.
But then again, this brings in all this complication, because if you say that if you go to jail, it must be because you're a criminal, then are you implying that if you don't go to jail, you're not a criminal?
No, I'm not.
Okay. Well, then again, at what point do we come to decide that somebody is a criminal?
That's not my point here. I'm just saying that, hey, both of them went to jail. Both of them were involved in illegal businesses for a very long time. Knowing what they're doing, they made their wealth, their money, making illegal traffic, and so and ultimately, he was the head of the Italian mafia in the U.S. Right. The good guy, right?
The good guy. Yeah.
So
we have the two names. There's
Vito.
There's Vito is the bad guy, and Frank Costello.
Yes.
Is the good guy.
Yes.
At least in this movie. Now I understand that this is based on real life characters,
yes.
And I haven't gone to read up and refresh my mind. I don't think
they are
new.
Wikipedia says that a lot of what we saw in this movie are true events.
But what I'm saying is their character as distinct in real life? Was it as distinct in real life? We don't know.
But we relate to the movie.
In this movie,
yeah,
we're talking about
Vito
good and
is
bad.
the bad guy, and Frank is the good. So Frank was the head of the Italian mafia in the U.S., and he was respected by everybody, meaning he ran the business very good, and everybody was happy. What does that say to you? To me, he is a criminal.
In the movie, he even talked about how, and this clash came up between him and Vito when Vito returned to the U.S. because Vito wanted to go into drug trafficking, and Frank said, No, that will cause problems, that will harm people, that will cause unrest. And so you really get the feeling that Frank, as the head of the US based Italian mafia, is in some way, he cares about people, he cares about peace and prosperity and stability, and
he has a limit.
And he has a sort of moral code, a clear moral code, which is, from what we gather in the movie, is presented as really quite an admirable, quite a.
And it is so important for him that he was ready to die for it. He wouldn't cross the red line. His red lines.
And so.
Whereas Vito, he was more like, look, I don't care as long as it pushes me towards the top, as long as it brings me more money.
Several times. I don't put in. I take out.
Yes. Yeah. I don't care. So, okay. So obviously we have this clear separation, distinction between these two characters with an obvious, it's screaming out on us, hey, this is the bad guy and this is the really good guy. And naturally your affections are starting to go towards him.
You start to feel sort of like pulling for the good guy.
But again, both are criminals. So
you see me being like,
yeah.
Okay, look,
it's okay.
I am treating this movie on its own 2 feet. I'm not saying that this is the case in the real.
Yeah. We're just talking about the movie.
I want to make that clear. Because what I gathered in this movie, what the movie presented of the good guy, presented somebody who's not really criminal, either by activity or nature. He's an outlaw. Okay, what do I mean by that? When I say criminal, I think of somebody who will do bad things to people. I see somebody who does things which are, you say, oh, that shouldn't have been done. He shouldn't do that. And what I see in Frank Costello in the movie is somebody, okay, in his younger years, in his 20s, he got in trouble for something. He was a young guy. He did something stupid. He got in trouble and he got cited for illegal gun possession. Okay, is that a big criminal thing, cited for illegal gun possession? Man, so many people. It's you can't say that that's some great evil. And then later, when he went and testified before Congress, he didn't even. Okay, he walked out, and I guess he went.
Why?
Because he wouldn't tell of his unlawful activities.
Why?
But again, he went to jail for it. But again, he didn't go to jail because of his criminal activities. He went to jail because he was in contempt of Congress. Again,
Why was he? No. Why was he in contempt of Congress?
Because he refused to answer their questions.
Why did he refuse? Because if he would have truthfully answered the question, he would have gotten into deep trouble.
Of course, because he was doing, I'm not saying he's doing things legally. He is unlawful. He is outside of the law. But his maneuverings and his putting politicians in power and his
I understand.
are not things that you say, oh, he's a bad person. He's a criminal. Yeah. Look, how many politicians are just, it reflected just as badly on the politicians as it did on him. Yes. So my point is, that's why I'm like, okay, I see. You call him a criminal. I'm making its distinction between criminality and unlawfulness, which is, okay, it's perhaps a bit belabored.
I see that the movie managed to make this clear distinction in your mind between Vito and Frank. Oh, that guy was really good. This guy was really bad. But let me throw in, and probably we will not be able to come to a conclusion on this discussion.
We might be arguing about this for some days.
Well, yeah, but this is the candid. Let me throw in another idea.
Okay.
Any person who is living their life in a perpetual law-breaking style, they are harming society, and they're living in a position that they're staying in the progress and prosperity of the entire society. The money that the mafia was making, even if they were not selling drugs, what did they do? What did they do? They were doing all sorts of illegal things. The laws are there to protect the honest citizen. Somebody who is, and I'm carefully choosing my words, I'm not saying who is breaking a law once or twice, who is living their life in a perpetual breaking of the law. That's their lifestyle. Even if they don't kill anyone, oh, he's a criminal because he killed. Okay, they don't kill anyone. They don't sell drugs. Okay, what do they do? What do they do? They probably have their ways on cheating on taxes. That was one of the main things that the mafia was and probably still doing back in Italy, cheating on taxes.
Well, in this movie, it was about the main
it was alcohol.
Was alcohol
That's
earlier
what
on, and then gambling later.
Illegal.
Yes.
Illegal gambling because in this country gambling was legal. So what does illegal gambling? So anyway, my point, I don't want to get into too many details, but that's my point. If a person's lifestyle,
your argument falls flat.
Okay.
Your argument falls flat because you just made my point.
Mm-hmm.
You say, okay, gambling was in some respects legal, in certain contexts legal. So then why the illegal gambling? It's all gambling, man. And what about the alcohol? It was during Prohibition. And everybody knows that Prohibition was such a failure and it was such a political thing that even, I mean, the whole reason it came about and how long it lasted and all, it didn't work. And it wasn't helping society. It didn't help society.
So what?
And even the politicians and the law enforcement understood that because nobody really wanted to enforce the laws as it were. So here are these guys. They're taking advantage of, they're finding a way to meet the people's needs.
I understand, but that was not their only business.
I'm not saying, but that's what the movie was talking about. And if we're talking about this, then we have to stick with what the movie brings to light. Okay, but even back then, the Italian mafia was not dealing only with illegal gambling and alcohol sale during the Prohibition. What is illegal gambling? It's about taxes, as far as I know. Maybe I'm wrong. But they were always out there. They had businesses everywhere, business, but they didn't want to pay the taxes. Anyway, okay, enough of that. We're going to be arguing about this for a while.
The good guy, please let us know what you think. This is an interesting, and we're getting into the
let me just make
dissecting
make
the
my
law
point clear
and
here,
go ahead.
Because I know he has something in his mind about why these.
I do,
and I have something in my mind about why too, and we might even be in pretty close agreement in the end.
All right. Go ahead and make your point, please.
But my point about why I'm saying it's not fair what you're saying. It's not fair what you're saying. Because the point I wish to make in the end depends on this. And that is that this is not about whether it's illegal or not. It doesn't matter about whether it's criminal or not, per se. And that's why I'm taking you to task on this, because if you're going to go this far, then you also have to say all the politicians who participated were equally criminal.
So what's the problem with that? I mean, I'm used to that. Hey, I'm coming from Romania. What, do you have a problem with that?
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
But I'm just not sure that it makes sense then for you, because you said these people are living in
their lifestyle is
their entire lifestyle is built around breaking the law. And I'm not convinced it's that fair to say that is much different than many of the politicians.
I didn't say that. I didn't say it was different.
I know, but if you want to make a point about that here, then you have to somewhere draw a line. Otherwise,
no, because I was just focusing on these two characters, and my point was this. Obviously, the writers wanted to say, hey, Vito is the bad criminal, and Frank is the good, allow me to say, criminal. But the point is that at the end of the day, and why the same actor? At the end of the day, I mean, no, this is half of the picture. This is okay. Yeah, I'm just putting ideas together, right? It's candid. Come on. So this is half of the picture. In the criminal world, criminals are human beings, right? They're just people, and like any other human beings, some have. How should I say this? They are better on morals than others.
Oh, absolutely.
They have some have wider red lines.
Some have integrity.
Yeah.
Some don't.
Exactly.
Some have self-respect. Some don't.
Exactly. And you come to admire.
Some follow an admirable code of conduct.
Yes.
Others don't.
Like, okay, if we're coming to sticking with Italian mafia, right? Italians, for them, family. You don't touch family. If it came to something with the family, they didn't care about money. All of a sudden, money was nothing. Money was not. So anyway, back to what I was trying to say. So there are good criminals and bad criminals. It's true, but this is half of the picture. And if you just look and take only that, you can be deceived. Because the other half of the picture is that both of them is the criminal. Both characters were played by the one actor, Robert De Niro. He was Vito. He was Frank. He was the bad guy. He was the good guy. Meaning, it's true that among criminals, some are good, some are bad, but don't forget, both of them are criminals. That's that's what I understand at this point.
Okay.
That's what I understand at this point.
Yeah, I mean, that's okay. I kind of agree with that. I can't say that I argue with that, but I guess I would maybe recast it or
Okay.
reshape it a little bit. It's interesting to me that the good guy in this movie is the king of them all. He's the boss of the bosses. He is the one who, if he says something, everybody beneath him obeys.
Right.
And it was pretty clear in the movie. Everybody operated by the rules of the game. Except for Vito. But regardless, still, when Vito comes back, the bad guy, he is under the authority of Frank. And Frank is the good guy. Vito is the bad guy. So what this is saying to me is that, yes, there are good guys and bad guys and so on and so forth. And this can be just within the world of mafia. It can be broadened out to the world of any illegal activity. It can be broadened out to all of society. But the idea is that as much as Frank had his code of conduct and as much as he had his morals and his way of relating, which was in this movie good, he was Vito in the sense that he was responsible for Vito. He was everybody underneath him.
Okay.
Because he was the head. He was everybody underneath him. So to me, this is making the point of anybody with any kind of responsibility bears that responsibility for those underneath him, whether it's good or bad that's being done. Now, it's true. Vito was a wild card. Vito was difficult to control. And here is where Frank had to recognize that this was a big problem. And it was interesting to me. He didn't just step out and hand it all over to Vito. He could have. He could have just gone to Rome as his wife wanted to do, but that scene where he said, yes, but I've got to clean this up. I have to clean up. I have to finish. And then he goes about to basically take steps that would cause the unraveling of the entire organization. In a way, it was kind of his recognition of, if Vito is still out there, everything I stand for is meaningless, because I have this responsibility, or I am responsible for what Vito does. Even if Frank wanted to remove himself entirely,
yes,
and he hands it over to Vito,
yes,
still he is responsible for whatever happens.
Well, this brings in another question, because you remember, after the attempt to assassinate Frank, one of the closest guys to him told him, hey, this is unacceptable. We all know. And then remember when they had that small reunion, they said, we all know this is against the rules. He broke. Let's just kill him.
And it's an open.
Yeah. Let's kill him. He needs to be killed. And he was passing to Frank.
He was ready to go do it.
And he was passing to Frank himself this same idea, and he refused.
And Frank refused, yeah. So that...
Why did he refuse? Because, I mean, what was the alternative? Obviously, he thought about a plan, and his decision was to put an end to the mafia.
Yes.
Italian mafia organization nationwide. Mm-hmm. That was
and it's interesting. I guess I'd have to rewatch the movie, or at least part of it. But now thinking back to when he's testifying before Congress, maybe that really was meant to portray a kind of a turning point in his understanding of where he is in all of this, and his responsibility in all of this, because he thought he was good, and he thought he could present information and satisfy everybody, no problem, whatever. And then when he finally gets to the point that he cannot say anything that is defensible,
clean, mm-hmm.
He doesn't try to defend himself, and he sits there for a long time, and it wasn't really portrayed as a big kind of revelation to him. But I thinking back now, I kind of wonder, is that the point at which, he really suddenly realized, I don't want to have any part in this anymore. And
then most probably I'm just thinking that Frank's thoughts developed while all of this was going on, and obviously he didn't want to have Vito killed. Did he want to save Vito as well? Maybe he wanted to save Vito as well. But at the end of the day, he decided, I want to put an end to everything. And he came with this plan.
And what I gather is the reason he didn't want to have Vito killed is because even though Vito didn't care, Frank cared about their long-time connection back to boyhood. So in Frank's world, it's not okay to kill your childhood friend.
And he had red lines.
And he had red lines.
That he wouldn't cross, regardless.
Yeah, no matter how horrible they become, even if they try to kill you, somehow for him, it's just not okay. You can't cross that line in his mind. So I don't know. I'm not sure if that whole testifying before Congress was really a turning point for him, or if it's just part of the progression of the story. But in the end, I got the impression that Frank chose the only way out that he could see that would be the least bloodshed, the least hurtful, and that would be freedom inducing rather than take away people's freedoms. And it's interesting. I say freedom inducing rather than take away people's freedoms, even though so many people went to jail because of what he did.
Including himself.
And he recites it as, I did some time too, and here we are too, but he seems to be kind of come to terms with his past, as he's telling it. He's not he's not judging it. He's just telling the story. This was my life, and then now I do roses instead. That was a good line.
By the way, we have 3 moments here. Amy wrote down 3 moments which made us
Okay, this
smile.
first one. Can you believe this is a big hit?
You believe this is a big hit?
Times are changing.
They're sitting in their
Living room.
penthouse, and he's
Watching
little
Frank with
black
his-
and white TV.
Frank with his wife.
And some music comes on that
Little Richard, Tutti Frutti.
okay, and he turns to his wife. He says, "Can you believe this is a big hit?" She responds with something like, "Times are changing" or something. That's a theme in the movie. Times are changing. Times are changing. Times
Well.
have changed.
And why didn't they play Bob Dylan? I don't know.
And
Okay, the second one.
Then, kind of at the height of the tensions, as Frank has already started the wheels turning in the process of taking action, and everyone's traveling to this farm way up north to have this big convention of all the bosses and everything. Vito is in the car with 2 other guys. One who was his
Hitman, the driver.
missed hitman.
Yeah.
The hitman who missed, and the other is another one of the bosses, and they passed someplace. Anyway,
The hitman said, "This is where the Mormons
started.
found the Golden
And
Bible."
this argument ensues about, no, the Mormons are out in Utah, they're out in the desert, and the hitman says, no, they started here, and Vito in the back seat, he's on edge and he's irritable, and so it turns into a whole argument, which gets close to dangerous, but along the way, this whole discussion about okay, if you can't, what you're saying can't be true, because if somebody finds a golden Bible here, why would they go all the way out to the desert in Utah? What? I mean, it doesn't make sense. If I found a golden Bible
I
here,
would keep on digging.
I would keep on digging.
Find more.
Look, tell me, if you found a golden Bible here, what would you do? Would you go out to the desert? I don't think so.
And then he asked the question.
I mean, who's gonna leave a place after they just dug up a gold Bible and move all the way to the middle of the fucking desert? Who? Name me somebody who's gonna do that. Huh?
And that was so good.
And Amy answered that question. But we
I'm
won't
not
tell
gonna
you the
say.
answer. We won't tell you the answer.
I'm not gonna say.
Maybe
No.
you will guess.
But it was such a great scene there with and the handling of the question was so good. Okay, and then one more at the end, the roses. Yes. So after Frank is retired, he's stepped away from all this stuff, and he's just living his life peacefully. In his old age, he's talking about how he breeds roses now rather than the horse racing and all of that, and he's even won some prizes for some of his cultivars, and he talks about how the people are nice, at these shows, because they don't even know who he is. He's just a guy with roses.
And even if they know, they don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah.
And he says something about the roses.
They're cheaper than horses and they smell better.
Anyway, they're cheaper than horses and they smell
Yeah,
better. Yeah.
yeah.
Great line.
So
Great line.
nice, some really nice lines in the movie too.
So, as you can tell, we enjoyed this movie. Thought-provoking. We are going to talk about it at least for a few days
we'll be
and
discussing
toss
these
ideas
ideas.
around. Let us know what you think about the questions that we have in our minds. Let us know other questions that are coming into your mind.
How do you
And
feel
let's
this movie? What do
continue
you-
the discussion.
Is it something that you just find as a nice period drama sort of thing, or is there something a little bit deeper to it? And if so, what is it about it to you that seems to be the core of things? What's the crux of the movie? So
Yeah.